So,
You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tatah. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherlands calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.
good evening over there, Accra. I think this must be pretty late out there. And yes, and I'm saying good evening out here. So that should be good night out there. And as you can see, today we have a very, very special, exclusive broadcast live from Ghana, Accra. It's been a very, very long time that we haven't touched base with our correspondent out there, Professor Dr. Wahab Farouk. You know, competent, competent political analyst, consultant, and opinionist. That's what I call Arrowhead. We all do know is not only the roving ambassador connecting the diaspora, particularly West Guinea, West Papua, and some other regions out there, but Al has been very instrumental in the political landscape of actually the current events that are happening on the continent and even in the diaspora. And particularly today is a very unique day as we would be remembering our godfather, our president, who happens to be the brain godfather of Mr. Al Wahab. This is in the name of our late ancestor, uh, General John Jerry Rawlings, who passed on the 12th of November 2020. So today we're talking about 11 of 11 2022. So he's apparently left us physically 2 years ago. And a lot of things have happened in this sequence. And the reason why we haven't been having Professor Dr. Al Wahab here is just because he took a really long time to heal from this lust, and we do understand, and we gave him all the time that he actually needed to depart physically and emotionally from our late ancestor Roland Jerry's Excellency. So a lot of things have happened, and if we look at on the continent and in the diaspora, the main question would be like, if we look. I'm just going to be specific, like the takeover in Burkina Faso, and everyone is saying this Sankara that transited a couple of 10, 20, 30, 40 decades ago is back to life. And we look at the uprisings also in the French-speaking African countries. Not only that, but if we move over to east of Africa, we're talking about the newly brokered peace between Ethiopia and Tigray. And if we don't even stay there, we move over to the political crisis or the war in the Ukraine and a Russian war that has actually given some critics are saying that African leaders are taking that as an excuse for their bad governance and policies that are coming. But if we look recently also in East Africa, we are rejoicing and celebrating, the marriage between Kenya and South Africa, the visa-free area that is actually, that Africans are celebrating out there. So there's a lot that has been going on. The US just went into elections 2 days ago, and we've seen a lot of Black members of Congress out here, women, men, particularly also of Nigerian descendants. And we in Africa as well as Nigerians are also also and with the political president or leadership of this giant nation. Because a lot of Africans are saying if Nigeria is stabilized, Democratic Republic of Congo is stabilized, so we don't even need to worry a lot. But a lot of good news again in the socio-political landscape that we also registered is the recent meeting between His Excellency Paul Kagame and the Prime Minister of the Caribbean, Barbados, Mia Motley. And so we're seeing a lot of incredible upcomings in the socio-political landscape. What would you say if Rawlings was alive today would be happening? Welcome to the show.
Welcome, Susan. It's been a long time that you engaged me. You've been running away, and then also today you've been promoting my academic law as Professor Doctor. Anyway, thanks a lot, and then also good, cherished listeners and viewers out there. It's been quite a little bit time now that you saw me on Susan's screen. It's not been my fault. She was rather not inviting me. So to those who sent messages that I was dodging off, I wasn't dodging, because the last time she made me give a vow, a promise that I'll be constant every other week or every week. But then of course she's at the back there. So if she's not inviting me, what would I do, Susan? At long last you invited me today. So with Rawlings' issue, as you and I know, that he was one of the most popular African leaders of in the last 35 or 40 years in the history of Africa. During the times of revolutionary era, all over Africa, predominantly West Africa, when at the time that he came to power at that youthful age, events leading to his first coup d'etat, which was abortive, and then second successful one, and then the third one subsequently from 1982, that he ran as a military leader until 1992, and then he switched on to civilian government. One would say that at the time, he was the only among the few of the African military leaders who first announced democratic dispensation, and for that matter, giving back power, which of course, popularly, he himself contested for the presidency, and he won. And then went on 8 more years, making his overall ruling of Ghana 19 years. Indeed, post-independent Ghana is the ever longest serving leader, president or head of state, which one that you term it, of Ghana. Indeed, there were a lot of remarks, there were a lot of remarkable things that he did. And of course, I mean, one will talk about civilian rule and then a coup d'etat or military putsch, which overthrew maybe a civilian government. But there was maybe a justification by him. And then till today, it's a little bit arguable as to it was good, or sometimes it's good in military, or sometimes it's bad with the military. When a country adopts a civilian dispensation in the constitutional system, one would say that military coup d'etat is not acceptable. But sometimes you would also find it difficult to understand the normal civilian and the constitutional rule, which we all subscribe, the way they handle things. So one would ask, either it's a revolution by pen in the case of the civilian, or revolution by gun in the case of the military. So sometimes both of them are not right, but sometimes both of them could be right. Rawlings, he demonstrated his intentions to give power. He didn't put too much pressure, even though leaving the scene after 19 years, his party was the most popular party as at that time. The opposition had been in opposition for nearly 40 years, up to that 2000 elections. So one would have expected that he was going to keep and make sure his party goes in or continue with his legacy. What does it mean? It means that others were thinking that, okay, during the initial stages in 1982 of the revolution era, a lot of atrocities were caused by the military. leading to about 8 generals or 8 former presidents who were all, let me say, assassinated one day, following or suspected to have been engaged in other financial or whichever. So that particular aspect of it, till today, the Ghanaian society didn't like it, because if even that was the case at all, they could have been sent into prison. Maybe by now some will be alive, or some would have been long time when he himself adopted a democratic dispensation. He would have released them, but they were killed. So the souls were lost. On that score, people were not happy. But on the other flip side of it, we will say that there were good things that he did. Ghana was very much in darkness. If I'm talking about darkness, economic darkness, and so many things that you can think of. He tried to open up the economy. You can't take it away from him. We didn't have things like a lot of radio stations. He allowed at a point, initially he was very stubborn on that, but he allowed the media landscape also to excel. At the same time, he was the one who helped Ghana today, that we having the access of internet and all that, mobile phone companies. It was in his tenure who that he tried to let some of these telcos, telecommunication companies, to come into the system, and more or less it helped open an economy and other things. Well, you will not claim perfection for any part of the world, presidency or monarchy or whatever. Nonetheless, I would say that he did many things. Ghanaians loved him, even though his popular word that he's boom. He booms sometimes, and he goes very outrageous, very wild, but not that was standing on the whole, and on the continent of Africa, not the Ghanaians per se, but non-Ghanaians, especially Nigerians, had always said that they would have preferred Rawlings being a leader in Nigeria. A lot of African countries echoed the same sentiments, that they would have wished that Rawlings can do. So for me, I think he was much loved outside Ghana, more the Ghanaians themselves. But then predominantly, any Ghanaian in your 40 years, or let's say people from the age of the last 40 years, last 45 years, they only celebrated, let me put popular politician that some of us, we all came to know, undoubtedly is Rawlings. And I think a good number of the youth of the day, 24 years and below or 30 years and below, they don't have anything bad to talk about Rawlings. They all like him. It's the old political class that also have a little bit of an issue, because it was their era that he overthrew. But largely, I would say that between the ages of up to 45 today, much was not criticized against him. And it's quite saddened that he passed on. We liked him. We like when he goes on air. In the end, you could see him even on the principal street directing traffic. There were so many things that one would say that, oh, he was a populist leader. No, that per se, but charismatic, and then his own, that was his style. So we do miss him, and of course we forever miss him. We don't look at only the negative aspect, which is part. There are some presidents, we call it, they are, let me call it, they are civilians, very calm, non-military background, they are not holding guns. But things that they do, one would have preferred that then let a military who has that kind of a discipline training, let him treat me that way than a civilian government. So on the whole, it's sad. And I'll take this opportunity to wish all of us Ghanaians the sudden death or the passing out of Rawlings. We should use some of the good things that he did. His legacy should still live on. Of course, we cannot take all, adopt all, but the good things that he left behind, we should remember him in prayers, and then also his family that he's left behind. I would take this opportunity to say that the family, my condolences and then my sympathy. 2 years comes very fast. It's just too much of a flash, very quick. But here we are. That is mankind, and that is their life. We shall all go one day, but nobody wants to go. So that is on Rawlings. I think he was a good leader. He was a nice leader, regardless of his flaws. He did well for Ghanaians.
Wonderful. Like I said, for those of you that are joining, this is a voice from Ghana, Accra. the big guy, Al Wahab, is going to really go around and brief us on the political issues that have been occurring on the continent and in the diaspora. Now, when you look at the 3 years back, even, and you look at today, the uprisings, the revolutions, the coup d'etats, the civilian governments, the takeovers, where would you position Africa today? Before we even go to the Ukraine war, let's just take our own conflicts on the continent. And 3 years back,
Okay.
you look at Tigray, Ethiopia, and the other regions. What would you update us on? Very quick. Thanks.
Okay, let me first touch base with the coup d'etat in recent times on the west of Africa. But then historically, let us not forget that coup d'etats on the African continent had always been around. West Africans are the originators of coup d'etats. In the last 40 years, in the last 50 years, in the last 60 years, post-independent Africa, and I'm referring to West Africa, post-independent, after 6 years and then 8 years of all the African continent, West Africa per se, that went into, or that had independent, after 6 years, all of them were whacked away by coup d'etat. So especially, it's a speciality of West Africa with coups. Burkina Faso, not in isolation. Ghana had several coup d'etats. Even Rawlings sustained about 23 coup d'etats against Rawlings alone, but he was able to succeed all through. Think of it, Nigeria, how many coup d'etats, including his Shegu Obasanjo, all of them, Buhari, you can think of since 1978, Nigeria in the 60s, they all had coup d'etats. So, which country in West Africa? Benin had their fair share, Togo had their fair share. Burkina Faso, they've had coup d'etats more than any other country in West Africa. Cote d'Ivoire has had a one-time coup d'etat, Robert Gay, and then also Mali, several times of them. The only country in West Africa that has not experienced coup d'etat, or it's of course Senegal, but Guinea, they've had coup d'etat. Guinea-Bissau, coup d'etat is the food that they were eating and they are still eating because they have coup d'etats within a day after day. Some presidents, some head of state came for one day. Burkina Faso had situations like that where there were some presidents who were only head of state for 13 days. It was who removed them. The one who came spent about 6 days, who removed them. Some spent 1 year, who removed them. They are like the British system, which is no coup, but then also they also go by just like that. So coup d'etat, I'm not surprised that in recent time, West Africa have, quote unquote, started developing the old system that we didn't want. Again, it started with Mali. Case of Mali, you would understand that Mali has a presence, operations of 14 or more active insurgency groups. 14 operations, military operations in terms of Al-Qaeda, the Daesh, ISIS, Ansawat, Ansidin, the jihadism, they have terrorism, they have rebellion groups, they have bandit group, about 14 that are operating in Mali alone. And these were made possible. Some of them, of course, were part and parcel of then Libya Arab Jamaria, who had gone there as some of the Tuaregs who were in the Libyan army, in Seba, Ghat, down south, coming all over. So after the fall of Gaddafi, all of them came back. And when they came back, they had nothing and they didn't know. So the only thing to do is just only to go back to their region and cause mayhem, either to do for money or just only try to have issues with the government, etc. So look at it from that point. The central government of Bamako, they were not too much focusing on quelling or finding a way to stop either political dialogue or political discussions or roundtable. They didn't. And the Mali themselves knew very well they don't have that kind of a capacity and the capability in terms of the military might to go out there and fight with 14 rebellion groups. Where does it begin? Where do you begin from? The money was an issue for the Malian government because of the military defense budget wasn't too big. Were they dealing with the old Ansawat, which is a Mali-born rebellion group, or Ansardine, Mali-born rebellion group, or they are dealing with ISIS, or they are dealing with Al-Qaeda-backed rebellion group or terrorist group? Or alternatively, the other side, they have also a lot of insurgency and they had a lot of jihadism. And then they were fighting among themselves at the level of the groupings. And then the government also got involved, thereby bringing the French, also trying to, you remember the French government or the French military going into Mali to fight and chase for whichever reason. Nobody also understands that what the French was doing in the north, the Timbuktu area, the Gao area of Mali, etc. And if you look at the vast nature of the Mali land, I think it's about the third or the fourth biggest country on the African continent in terms of size. Look at it, borders all the way down to going to the Algerian side, and then also Niger. It borders with a lot of countries, with Senegal and others. So the French, rather, in my view, their presence out there, even though, yes, they said that they were chasing the ISIS and the Al-Qaeda in that region to flush them out, post-Gaddafi, it had a backlash. So it rather strengthened the people, and they got armed because they know their source of getting arms. Not forgetting that even Boko Haram of today in Nigeria, the Mustafas and all those ones, those gentlemen and those guys who formed Boko Haram, they didn't form Boko Haram in Nigeria. They were extremist group who were part and parcel of Ansawat, and some were Ansardine. So when they expertised with the Malians in the Timbuktu area and got to know that, oh, there's an easy way of making money by causing some kind of disaffection or giving the government, the central government, problems, they went there to form an extremist group called Boko Haram, meaning that Western education is a crime or Western education is a sin. They made them extremists because what they lay forth, asking the government and the people of Nigeria to follow, they know very well that it's not possible. So that makes them an extremist group, because they say that no Nigerian should have a formal education, except you must stick to Islam, Islamic teachings, and then Quranic education, etc. So it is all boils down on everybody must be a Muslim, more or less, which they know very well it is an extremist request. It is not possible. So out of that, yes, we don't want anybody to be in school, just like everybody must be a Muslim. So we are rebellions, or we are terrorists, or we are extremist group. We go into the bush and start to make problems with the central government. All these things were picked from the land of Mali. They picked all this from the land of Mali. So Mali indeed had been a training center, more or less, of the West African terrorists, and then also rebellion, insurgents, Protestants, all manner and all forms are found in Mali. And the essence of it is what we are experiencing in Burkina Faso. So in leading to the coup d'etat of Goïta in Mali, you know, he came in very easy and then he went out. But one would also ask, he was a French legionnaire. He was a French army, Malian army, that the French government took him. They took him and Mamadou Doumbouya from Guinea. All of these gentlemen were French legionnaires. They joined the French army, even though with Mali flag and then also Guinean flag, respectively. How did they join the French army? How were they with the French? And then subsequently, even went with the French, with the NATO to Afghanistan to fight, only for these gentlemen to come back, and in no time, coup d'etat back to back. Isn't it so amazing and so wonderful? That is where we are. They had a coup. He gave back power. Within a short period of 8 months, he reversed, I'm talking about Mali, came back and seized power. And then, like usual, the French system of like the coup d'etat in any country, they give you 2 years. We restore power, we give back to the civilian. Here we are. What happened with ECOWAS? ECOWAS gathered, they went there, the Accra Declaration, Peduasi Declaration, all manner of declarations were, and then they imposed sanctions upon sanctions. But Dr. Tatah, the reality is that no sanction in West Africa or African Union or West Africa ECOWAS, no sanction works whenever there's a coup d'etat. No sanction works. The reality is very simple. How do you sanction a country? You yourself, they don't owe you, you don't owe them. You only sanction a table and chair. That you fold the table, right Mali, cross it. So a Malian delegation will not sit in. Sanctions that ECOWAS had given to Mali, which one of them had provided any meaningful results? It cannot provide any meaningful result because the inter-trading, cross-border trading, bilateral, and long even among us as West Africans, there is none. It doesn't even exist to that extent. Take that one out. Tell me one single country within the sub-region that is owing the other one. We all take our plate, we all take our pants, and then go to Europe, go to Asia, go to America, Central or Latin or North America, to go for loans and facilities, aid and grants. Yet, there is no African country that borrows the fellow African country money. There's no African country that does road construction for the other African country on grant or aid. No. So, if he seizes power and he sits in Mali, yes, sovereign country, sovereignty rights, etc. Who dare you, or what right do you have? What can you do to that? Ghana says we've sanctioned Mali. Yet, the Mali ambassador in Accra here is so pretty. The same thing like Doumbouya. You remember when Doumbouya coup against, what's the name? The old man, okay? I was the first person to say that that was not a coup d'etat, that was not a military putsch. It was more or less an arrangement takeover sort of a thing. Because, look at it, to every African, coup in Guinea, in mostly, there's no bloodshed. The same thing like Mali. It's very extreme. In a very extreme instance, no more than 2 or 3 or 4 people dies in Mali coup. Why? The tribal settings, the Fulanis, and then the Bambaras, the Mahindu, all these tribes, they don't kill each other. It is the same thing like the Guinea. It's the same thing like the Burkina Faso. The coup d'etats, the military are from the same tribal settings. Either they are City Bay, or they are Sissoko, or they are this, they are that. And they are within their main mix. They are family members. So their coup provides no bloodshed. And the story was not different. When Doumbouya, who was then, of course, the Special Forces commander, look at the gentleman's age at the time that Alpha Condé has to take him to join the French army. Look at his age. When he joined the French Legionnaires, he went with them to Afghanistan to fight, came back and came. When he came, Alpha Condé, who of course was the first democratic president of the Republic of Guinea, after Secretary, and then the second one who lasted, I've forgotten. You understand? He came and then even changed the constitution that it was even too long, 7 years or 6 years as the first mandate. Subsequently, 2 mandates was okay. He reduced it to 10, 5. So every Guinean was very okay. However, when he finished his first and second term, what happened? He also did, even though not a revolution with a knife or with a gun, he also staged a coup, somehow changing the constitution, thereby making the Guineans angry. What happened? When the Guineans were angry, they were demonstrating, you remember, in 2020 or so. The same Alpha Condé used Mamadou Doumbouya to crush the opponents, arrested them, beat some of them, and put them in jail. By Doumbouya, it was then the special forces, not even the military high command. It was the special forces for Alpha Condé himself. But when there was a demonstration mounted on the head of Alpha Condé on daily basis, then we had the emergence of a coup. what happened? The old man was picked from the presidential palace by the same special forces, telling him that, oh, they have a fear that there's a coup in the air. Let us take you to safety. As he left the presidential palace, that is when they handed over the resignation letter that, you know, step aside. And then it was a silent coup. Nobody died. I think one person got injured or something like that. He took him out. What did Ecowas do? Ghana, till today, the head of Ecowas is His Excellency, the President of the Ghana Republic, Nana Akufo-Addo. They sent West African ministers of foreign affairs. All of them went to Guinea. Going to do what? They are going to cry and then look at, they want Alpha Condé released or restored in power. They know very well that military, they don't work like that. There is a coup, they've overtaken him. There is no way that they can go. We are ECOWAS ministers, foreign affairs. They say, okay, this is Alpha Condé, go and sit back on the throne. It doesn't work out like that. They couldn't even see Alpha Condé. And when they saw him, I had come out to say that Alpha Condé is fine. He's doing well. He was eating his couscous. He was having his medical attention, etc. A lot. Ghana was the first country, Nigeria, etc., also to sanction Guinea. Sanction them for what? They sanction only tables and chairs, because we've not put ourselves economically strong as a powerhouse. Whereas when we sanction a country, it affects them. Meanwhile, when these countries, ECOWAS led by Ghana, we sanctioned Alpha Condé, Doumbouya, yet the Ghana embassy in in Guinea, Conakry, had not been closed down. Burkina embassy had not been closed down. Nigeria embassy has not been closed down. So where's the diplomatic protest to mount a pressure on them? Nothing. So there was nothing that they do. Doumbouya and this old man, after 3-4 months, when the ECOWAS presidents, leaders were busy having tea, drinking tea, having discussions about Guinea, they didn't know that this same Doumbouya has granted the man even a medical vacation out in Dubai. He took him to Dubai, and Africans were making noise here. And then after 2-3 months, the old man was in Dubai for 3 months for medical checkup. When he came back, somebody who had been overthrown, asked any Guinean, Alpha Condé became more or less a short-term advisor to the president, to Doumbouya. He was an advisor. And then he pointed out his ministers and those that he should arrest. After that, where is he? They took him back. He's comfortably relaxing either in Saudi or relaxing in Dubai with a perfect accommodation house bought by Guinean government and giving him. Do you call that coup d'etat? But the whole Guineans supported the gentleman and they are supporting him. Well, you talk about constitution which has been crashed down by military coup d'etat, but because of how the Guineans have received the coup, how the Guineans have supported the coup more or less, no any African leader, West African for that matter, has spoken. No African Union has spoken, except that, as I said, the African Union, they've sanctioned Guinea. If you sanction them, it's only chair and table that you sanction, and you will not come and sit on it. Yes, ECOWAS have sanctioned him. He will not come and sit on the table. That is it. He's in his country, and he's still. Whether he will give up power or return power, it's only hangs in the balance. Now come back to Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, the issue is a complex and dicey issue. The dicey issue originates from Thomas Sankara's death, where Blaise Compaoré, who was the deputy or second in command of that young man at the time, decided to kill him, decided to take him out, because the French, without any fear or reservation, were not happy with the Sankara style, with his closeness to the English West African countries, and precisely with Ghana. Sankara was flying to Accra almost every day to talk to Rawlings for advice, because Rawlings had been in power at that time for over 10 years. So Sankara became like Rawlings became like his historian father. So the French were not happy. That was the only coup d'etat in Burkina Faso since Zebo's time, since 1960, that the leader was killed in a cold blood. That was the only coup d'etat that the Burkinabe killed their fellow brother. They were not killing themselves. The leaders were all the time ousted. They were taken out through a military putsch, yes, but they don't kill them. But Blaise Compaoré killed him. When he killed him, let us not forget there were a lot of boys who supported Sankara who were junior armies. And of course, good number of them, the loyal ones left the army, but some were still in. Traces and the loyalty was still there. So Blaise Compaoré, over the years, for over 30 years being the president of Republic of Burkina Faso, there were issues. What was the issue? The issue was that when Al-Hassan Ouattara in the Côte d'Ivoire elections that ousted His Excellency the President Laurent Gbagbo, when Soro Guillaume had divided that country into two, from one for the military operations were people that were sent to Côte d'Ivoire by Blaise Compaoré. So indeed, when the uprising went on and Laurent Gbagbo was overthrown, or let's call it after the election, he lost the election, let me use that word, and with all the drama that came up with it. Now, after that, the understanding was that Côte d'Ivoire was going to, that is Alassane Ouattara, was going to draft those Burkinabés who came to support Soro Guillaume into the army. They were going to draft them into a Ivorian army. But after that, he realized that it wasn't possible because the politique ivoirité, mais ou bien père, it was still there. So the Côte d'Ivoire army was saying that either mother or father, one must be an Ivorian. None of them was. So they couldn't take them, draft them into the army. So the boys were on the streets of Abidjan, frustrated. So a good number of them, after their promises were not fulfilled, they had to go back to Burkina. And what is the pressure? They feel that Al-Hassan, Blaise Compaoré had deceived them and wasted their life. That was because the mutiny that occurred, it didn't occur at the presidency, it was in the city. So those boys put themselves together and then using the idea which overthrew Roch, how do we call it, the president, okay? It was because they were claiming that Blaise Compaoré had let loose, and then all the Al-Qaeda and all the insurgents groups, and then the Boko Harams, etc., were all now shifting from Mali to Burkina Faso. That was what they used. The same strategy that, okay, is not fighting enough. Their villages are being bombarded by terrorists. They are being killed by rebels. They are being killed by insurgents. They are being, etc. So if you are not able and you are not a president enough, then get it out. So when the mutiny took place, that they were shooting all over, Blaise Compaoré felt unsafe, and then Alassane Ouattara has to pick him out. Now he went out, interim government came in, then Roch Kaboré came in, then the same thing that the boys were saying, that Roch Kaboré should give the military the power for them to be able to go into the villages and fight. Yes, same French president, liberal, gentleman, today, he was not equipping the military. That led to the coup of Colonel Henry, that Sandaogo Damiba. So maybe Damiba easily went to take him out. Look at the coup d'etat between Roch Kaboré and then Damiba. No chicken was killed. No fowl was killed. They just took him out. He was left in the presidential palace. The noise were made in the city. They went there, okay, you are our brother. This is how we do in Burkina. We don't kill ourselves, but we don't want you anymore. Please come out. No stress, no harassment, nothing. Sign, and then allez. So he signed peacefully and he left. So Henry Kaboré, Kaboré Roch just left out of power. That was just in January. By Damiba. 8 months. The same way Damiba was also not supporting the military to go out there and fight with the Al-Qaeda and fight with the insurgents, that brought about the today, as you referred to, the second Thomas Sankara. 34-year-old boy, a captain like Sankara at the time, very young guy, Ibrahim Traoré. So he voluntarily stood in for the young boys and then the junior ranks in the army. As a captain, he was the highest among the boys who did that coup d'etat. That okay, you Damibadi were part. So the movement, the MPSR, they were all part. So the MPSR is just only part 1 by Damiba, part 2 by Ibrahim Traore. So Traore also easily, they made noise, called him out. We are Burkina based. We are not going to kill you. We don't kill ourselves. Tell us which country do you want to go. We have seized power. Let us not strike. Let us not listen. With the 8 months, you've gotten some money. Please peacefully leave. The junior ranks have taken control. Then you also have to sign peacefully. They gave him an aircraft because if it was a coup d'etat and they meant to kill him, they have already seized power before they allowed him to leave. They seized power before they allowed him to leave. So he signed and they published that he has resigned. They took him out to Lomé and then he has assumed power. Look at what happened just last week. The whole Burkina Faso, they agreed, quote unquote, that this time around, they want us to have a return to democracy, but peacefully. Surprisingly, even Ibrahim Traore did not attend the National Forum. He didn't go. But over 300 members of the existing parties, of the existing democratic settings, all of them voluntarily, agreeably voted for Ibrahim Traore to be the head of state, and even they said to be the president for 2 years, with one subject condition that he will not contest the 2024 elections. He will give him power, and they all agreed. Whether he will stick to that or not, nobody knows. But the national consensus that out of the national forum they had in Burkina, all of them gracefully, happily, the whole country have supported the idea that let the gentleman be the head of state and for that matter, the president until 2024. And then let's take our time to look into our political side settings and etc. and let the parties obviously take time to prepare themselves. We go into elections and that is it. So we elect our own civilian democratic president in 2024. So you see, on that note, you find out that, well, even though you call it coup d'etat, you call it military putsch, I'll call it a takeover, a gentleman's takeover, it hasn't produced any much heat in that region. But when you come down to, let's say, Ghana, Ghana hasn't got any issue. There were recently people were saying that Ghana is ripe for coup d'etat. Ghana cannot have a coup d'etat. It's a topic we can deal with on another subject, not on this platform for now, lack of time. But Burkina, Togo has a heat. The heat is that for Yadema's government, there is a person in the person of his own brother who had been in jail, which you know, for several years. These are what breeds or that brings about coup d'etat. Political prisoners, political opponents being imprisoned. And like I've said it, Ghana is so blessed, regardless of whatever Rawlings did, until Rawlings left our power. For a country of 35 million populated nation, we don't have one single political prisoner. 35 million populated country, we don't have one SDI leader. The police is not having anybody they are looking for who is a military officer or police officer. The military is not having, so the country's security profile is very clean. Set it aside. The whole country, Ghana, we don't have any military operations in our bush, in our forest. And for that matter, there's no UN jacket. And any country without UN jacket, without UN helmet, without blue jeans, without blue hair cap, you cannot have just easily things like that, meaning the country is cool. But Lomé, it's a little bit different. Benin had always been a gentle nation, very quiet. Now, Côte d'Ivoire, post Alassane Ouattara, who also succeeded in changing constitution to go to troisième mandat, the third mandate, which was against the Côte d'Ivoire constitution, the basis with which Alassane Ouattara came to power. That Laurent Gbagbo wanted to have a third term. The French didn't agree. How surprisingly, the turnaround by the French, by the international community, and they all looked, and Alassane Ouattara was able to have change the constitution, move from one party, and then take another party and go for a third term. Yes, amazingly, the 10-year period of Alassane Ouattara, he has done a great job, I must admit. He's done such a marvelous job at this age and his 10 years presidency. And if I compare what he's done in La Côte d'Ivoire, compare what he's done in La Côte d'Ivoire to Togo, compared to what he's done in La Côte d'Ivoire to Benin, compared to what he's done to La Côte d'Ivoire, a country that had come out from 10 years of uprising, I would say that he's done well. However, constitution was touched. No ECOWAS member was against, no ECOWAS country member, including Ghana, that is the ECOWAS chair. They didn't protest. They didn't say anything. Now, after the third mandate of Alassane Ouattara, now Laurent Gbagbo is back to La Côte d'Ivoire. Côte d'Ivoire's issue is in balance. Côte d'Ivoire has also an exile leader called Soron Guillaume, who was the backbone and the originator of Alassane Ouattara's, how do you call it, democratic coup d'etat that put out Laurent Gbagbo. How was the turnaround? That Laurent Gbagbo, now out of jail, back to Côte d'Ivoire, and then Soron Guillaume is in exile. So we are looking at what happened next after Alassane Ouattara's 5 years term. So Côte d'Ivoire has an issue. Senegal, at the moment, it's a country, as I've said, they were the first country in the whole entire African continent, and for that matter, even the world, to have a rebel association, a rebel group formed by a woman 600 years ago. And that matter, Casaman's rebels. Casaman's rebels had been in existence since the last 600 years. But it's a country with a rich traditional culture that roots into religion. So the sheikh, the overlord, the religious body of Senegal, anytime there is a heat, he speaks to them. That is the main reason they have not had a coup d'etat. Either than that, as we speak, look at when the old man, Abdul Wahab, the son, after Abdul Wahab left power, the son Karim, he's been in exile all this long while because Macky Sall didn't allow him to come in. You remember the heat when even Abdul Wahab himself had gone out of the country, coming in, and Macky Sall, who is a political son of Abdul Wahab, he stopped him, and that was the first time the whole Senegal went on the street to demonstrate that allowed the man's flight to land. Macky Sall was not allowing his own political father to land in Senegal, and he was in the air for 2 hours. And when it became so big, he had no choice than to allow the man to land. Now, there is opposition, Soronko, who is from the Casamance area. And now, he has been arrested in and arrested out. I just challenge, where is the ECOWAS? ECOWAS is back. ECOWAS is not talking. Now, there's a preparedness. There's a certain spirit. There's a certain air. There's something in the air which says, or which directs that Macky Sall wants to prepare and go for a third term. Macky Sall wants to go for a third time. However, Susan, nobody is talking now. Soronko has a large followers, considering his age, considering the fact that they are the Casamans. They are the strongest in terms of Senegal and one of the biggest settings. Nevertheless, the ECOWAS is not talking about it. The boy is being troubled all over left, right, center by the political system. His affiliates and his friends and his party members have all, one way or the other, been going to jail back and forth under Macky Sall. But Côte d'Ivoire, how do you get Senegal, is the overlord, the spiritual father speaks, and then there's peace. So they are very safe. But the Gambia, as you are aware, after the fall of Yahya Jammeh, it's not the best of its kind, but they are calm. They are a bit tired. Guinea have had its fair share of the coup. So look at this West African region, the almighty Nigeria, the most populous nation in the entire African continent, the most biggest populated nation of the entire African continent, and for that matter, one of the richest entire African continent. Post Babangida, post Abacha, Nigerians are tired. The middle class of Nigeria had ballooned. The upper class have ballooned, and the elite class. So in a country when you see the middle class growing, and then also the upper class growing, and then the elite class have grown, nobody wants to toil, nobody wants to risk, nobody wants to leave his multi-million-dollar house. And Susan, you know, when you go to places like Abuja, or you go to even Lagos, Victoria Island, and then you go to Abuja, Sokoro, Wusetu, and those places, people will not leave their $15 million house and then go into exile or sit on the street. So Nigeria has also had a fair share of calmness, like Ghana, since the 80s, when their last coup of Abacha in the 90s, Abacha's era ended up. That is the end of Nigeria coup. So elections in Nigeria, which brought PDP, Obasanjo, who came in for 8 years, and then after him, the old man, was the name Yaradua, who came in for 4 years and passed on the third year on to the fourth year, and then brought good luck, etc. They've had, even though, troubled elections. Let me put it that way, because the country is large, their political system is a little too cumbersome. But in the entire African continent, it's one country that does well with the local politics or the local elections because of the senatorial and then also the governorship that they have, just like the American system. So they understand politics in a fair way, and their elections is also big money. Let me put it that the Nigerians, it's about money. The Nigerians now have understood that, okay, regardless, politics can divide us. But when it comes to give in, to allow the military to come in and destabilize the country, we are not prepared. So very good, very good. They are not, there's no coup d'etat, and there can't be any coup d'etat in the air. Buhari, he came back after his first time with Major General Idiagbon in the 80s, whereas at that time he did marvelously well. But then that time his governance, it was actually crowned to perfection by Major General Idiagbon, who was a no-nonsense man, who really steered the affairs of Buhari. But when left with Buhari alone, there have been a little bit of skirmishes. The good thing with him is that, well, he's not a president who steals or embezzles. However, me, I've always said that Nigeria is too big for one president. Much as I will not propagate at this point division or dividing the country, no, they are one Nigeria, let them stay together. But it's a country that needs 3 presidents to rule, because one is not enough. So Buhari, regardless with the good intentions, he has not been very sharp on the subject as Nigerians expected when he was a military leader. But it is very much so. At that time, the energy level was not the same. Now the politics is different from being a military leader. So indeed, he's struggling. Nevertheless, he has steered the affairs, the calmness somehow. The military had been very quiet. The battling of the Nigerian politics had been the Boko Haram politics. The Boko Haram politics is what Obasanjo did to come to power. Yaradua did to come to power. Goodluck did to come to power. All of them have used Boko Haram to come to power. Nevertheless, Boko Haram never happened. It is still in there. So, if you look at it from that angle, now Buhari is leaving the scene. Yes, who comes next? As I answer your question, that is it Peter Obi or Atiku or Tinubu Ahmed? But then it is a bit interesting. As African, we are also saying that, well, now let the youth also taste power. We want energetic young men to lead. But in Nigeria, it's the opposite way. You have leaders who are in their 70s, and I'm referring to Tinubu. Yes, every Nigerian will tell you that the records are there. The records beckon him. They know he's done well during his governorship. Yes, he's one of the few Nigerians who has really impacted and made Nigerian big boys. If you take out Babangida, Tinubu will be a single out person who has made Nigerian boys billionaires. He has created billionaires like the oligarchs in Russia. So this person now says, I want to come back. I want to be in the Nigerian politics. I want to be the president myself. Let us not forget that the APC government, it is Tinubu who was working with Asuanju, the Nigerian vice president, was working with Tinubu. So see Tinubu single-handedly move him out and gave him to APC of Buhari, when Buhari at the time during elections of 8 years ago was struggling financially with the APC. So Tinubu brought money and brought a vice presidential candidate to replace, to stand, whilst he knew that he was preparing himself, that at the right time when Buhari is leaving, Tinubu now wants to come in. Yes, Nigerians are saying that he's old, but that is the choice of the APC people coming in as the presidential contestant. Now, he comes against who? He comes against who? With Atiku. Yes, Atiku is an old hawk. He's been out there. He's been in Nigerian politics. He's been a commissioner with the customs unit of Nigeria before. Atiku had been a vice president under Obasanjo. He has been, he's seen it inside out and all. Yes. So one would have thought that, okay, maybe he will go and rest. But here we are, back again. So I asked myself that the two main parties, the APC and then PDP, in the case of America, the Democrats and then the Republicans, they do not have any young people. I asked, Tinubu has made so many young guys, effectively good lawyers, clever economists. Why would he not back with his money and experience to push the person and be a kingmaker, and he could rest his limbs because age is not on his side? Why would Atiku also not do that? But then the style of PDP had always selected an old president. They did that with Yaradua. Yaradua was very tired and weak. Obasanjo was tired and weak at the point. But yes, I like him because he really carries himself well and is still very active because of his military, maybe background. However, Goodluck was lucky, of course, just by his name, because Yaradua couldn't finish his term and then he went in. There came again an old man who, Buhari. So Buhari, look at his age, then he comes to power. Look at the age of Atiku if he should come to power today. Look at Tinubu if he comes to power today. So the Nigerian youth, with all the noise, with the issues confronting the country, can an old person stand? The answer is yes. The answer could be no. And that was where a Labour Party came up. And the Labour Party is the party of the unions of all the Labour groups, bringing in P2B. Yes, P2B started speaking, declaring his intentions about some 3, 4, 5 years ago, even ahead of all this. He declares intentions earlier. He's been a governor. Yes, he has a track record. He also has seen money, and he has money. Yes. So when we look at the Nigerian election, it should be one of the most diciest one. Why? Because there's a contest between two old men, and then the Nigerian youth who claim that they are not getting job to do, who claims that there's an old political class which has formed an elite system or elite political class, giving the people who don't belong to that political class, seeing you as no one. Therefore, do they want a young man who may, even though he's not as young as that, P2B is about 60 years, or he's 60 years, but compared to Atiku, compared to Ahmed Tinubu, then one would say that maybe he's a vibrant young man. But the reality of it is that Nigerians, whether we like it or not, imagine they like Ahmed Tinubu because he has a record. He's done a lot, he's made a lot, and he has impacted a lot. So these elections, I'm foreseeing a fierce contest, maybe between Tinubu and maybe Obi, because the Nigerian political class, the youth themselves, They also want where they can get money, where they can also get a kind of leverage. And if you're talking about money, either through the campaign or etc., then you would also find out that the drift will be towards the side of Tinubu. So it is difficult to predict. It's too early to predict. But it will be one of the most interesting elections in the history of Nigeria in the last 50 years, because they've not had a contesting three parties at a time. That is the first time. Should even Peter Obi not win, I think it will give a kind of a credence and credibility for Nigeria to have a third party that in the future, if not this year, if this not 2023, maybe some 4 years to come, there could be a third force party. Something that even our country, Ghana, we need. Ghana is the worst when it comes to a third party. We are so lazy. We don't give any chance to any third party. It's the old MPP, old NDC that are existing. So for them, they are accustomed to a smooth ride. They know there's no other party. If it is not MPP, they know it's NDC. They don't care. But what Peter Obi is doing now in Nigeria, then for me, I think it's a wake-up call. It is what is called the awakening, which Angelica Merkel from Germany came up from nowhere, from the East Germany, at the age of 29, came up with a party which she was the only member of the party, ended up being the longest serving Bundeskanzler, or the longest serving, how do we call it, Prime Minister of Germany. So let's see how Peter Obi's presence would really impact the results of Nigerian elections this year. Let's see how Peter Obi will be able to give a hit and a hot chase to Nigerian presidency. But if the Nigerian youth maybe would not decide and all to support, maybe it will be another turning point in the history of Nigeria. Let us wish them well ahead of the elections. It's just only some few months, 3 to 4 months. Let us wish them, because it's whether we like it or not, it is the biggest country and the biggest in terms of economic size, in terms of population and everything. If Nigeria had really taken their role on the African continent, they're supposed to be the police of the world like the United States of America is doing. Nigeria is supposed to be the leaders of Africa. Nigeria is supposed to be the country that should contest on the emerging markets like Turkey came, like Korea came, like Japan came, like Germany, like America, and other parts of the world. Rather, they let go as a result of corruptible practices, embezzlement, and then also stifling the country. So if there is any new political class, either Tinubu will change that, or Atiku will change that, or Peter Obi is going to change that. Anybody who really wants to take Nigeria to another level of political leadership, not only in Nigeria, but assume her role on the African continent, we will see a lot of changes. Africa needs a headmaster, Africa needs a teacher who will be holding the whip. United States have done it, UK did it, and China is doing it, and so, sorry to say, Russia also wants to do it. So we need a kind of leadership. That is why African leadership, the OAU, the African Union, my dear, it is not working. Now let's switch on to Ethiopia. It is the second. Sorry.
Let me refresh a little bit. You're just freezing for such a long time. We only hear you, and that was very good. I love the fact that you touch, even though you did not touch Cameroon. Was that intentional when you were talking about, the West African countries? We didn't hear, and I saw a comment in the chat saying, "What about Cameroon with the leadership of 40 years old president?"
Let me talk about Paul Biya. I told you that is my country, my second country, which, Susan, you are aware, right?
I do.
You are aware, okay? Cameroon, in terms of size of mineral resources and richness, indeed, on the continent of Africa, and for that matter, West Africa or Central Africa, is supposed to be one of the most richest countries on the entire African space. What am I saying? A country with a balanced rainforest, a country with over fertile land, and name Cameroon mineral resources, which are all in commercial volumes. Yes, the darker days of African election, African politics had come to pass. But then, being in Cameroon, and a country which I always have said, I somehow blame the French, and I somehow blame the English, and I somehow blame the two superpowers. Their agreement, which has brought Cameroon into disagreement today. But they purposely, carefully, the two of them decided to put the country into the situation where they find themselves in. Yes, if you are to trace back history or to reverse the entry, of course, we know the southwest, northwest of the English side, falling down to the Bakassi, one would say that it was part of Nigeria. It's fine. We don't reverse history. We don't reverse the entry. English gave in without contesting. Very nice. It's a bilingual nation. Canada is a bilingual nation. Why not? Very beautiful. Politics have divided the country Cameroon. Politics have divided Cameroon. The only thing that unites Cameroon is indomitable lions. And even it ends up after there's a gold jubilation. When Cameroon loses match, then they switch back into political alliance, into their respective place. Yes, there were not too many English players. The English players were not considered. There were only French players. That politics, only when they win, they forget about their sorrow. I'm having a serious issue and a problem with His Excellency Paul Biya. Way back in the 80s, when he assumed the role of being Cameroonian president. But sometimes, much I will not employ or advise military, etc. But of course, you and I know that Cameroon still have one of the weakest army on the continent of Africa, purposely done or purposely made by His Excellency Paul Biya, so that the military will not be strong against him either way. That one is also maybe his political philosophy, ideology. It could be fine. So it's another country that has also not tasted coup d'etat, which is not bad. But in reality, in fairness, if you look at administrative segregation, I won't call it racial segregation because the colors are well, but aggregate segregation administratively, it is not different from somehow the apartheid that existed in South Africa. So if today African country like nowhere than Cameroon is more or less, I'll be cautious here, but the reality, we must voice it out as such. Cameroon is practicing apartheid, more or less. I've had the chance traveling from, how do you call it, Akwa Ibom state of Nigeria, crossing on the Oron River through Atabon, coming to Nyenge, which I believe you know is your area. So between Nyenge and then also Kumba to Boya, coming to Douala, Littoral Province, the 17 kilometers outside of Douala, there is a barrier, which I experienced that I don't know whether it is still there, that everybody coming from the English side, you have to understand. Tout le monde descend. Carte d'identité, carte de séjour. So within a country where they own national, and then somewhere they have to return, go back to Boya, go back to your Bamileke land if you don't have the carte d'identité to come to Douala. Amazingly, surprisingly, and it has existed. Cameroonian offices, how many of them? Director, Francophone, Director adjoint, Francophone. Maybe any directorship will be a very minimal or supervisor, Anglophone comes in. This thing had existed under His Excellency Paul Biya. For me, I do not have a problem if he had even kept in power. As I'll say that, the longer the person stays in power, to me, it's not an abuse of maybe power. It's the usage of that length of time that makes you an abusive, or that makes you, how do we call it, undemocratic or maybe any other form of bad governance. Paul Biya has stayed in power for long. The Cameroonians are aware that the old man is not strong enough. If you go to Switzerland, Continental Hotel in Geneva, how long has His Excellency Paul Biya with his cabinet have lived there or goes out there for meetings? How many times does he live there? And then French police drive through to Continental Hotel and then take him to Lyon, enter through the French side and go to Paris. A month, he will be staying out there. 2 months, he'll be staying out there, receiving his ministers. Cabinet meetings are taking place in Continental Hotel. 6th floor, 7th floor, 8th floor. So the country is bleeding. Cameroon, that some of us do know. Douala, that some of us do know. I've known your country, Susan, very well, all the way from the English side up to the top. Mundu, Garawa, Marawa, Gandere, coming down to almost everywhere of that country. And it's such an amazing, rich, and amazing, beautiful country, beautiful people. Cameroonians are so nice, very nice. But they don't have the political clouds. And that one I would say is not the making of a Paul Biya. It's the making of the system that to some extent, even our brothers and sisters from the English side, Northwest, Southwest, when even it gets to the political season, surprisingly, they cannot even unite themselves. The Amazonians have differences. How do you fight with a divided front? How do you fight? So if all the English, all the Anglophones had put themselves under one political umbrella and decided to fight the system, yes, fighting the system does not mean only violent, have decided to push the agenda, one, yes, of course, one next Cameroon, it is one Cameroon. But let the things, let the system, let the military, let the police, let even the schools. It is not right that Cameroon, there are certain schools, English you hardly find time to enter. The only thing that you find Cameroon, like I said, if it's not football, c'est Makossa, typique. That one, if the English musician, now, tout le monde, we all dance together. Apart from that, there's a division. English sees himself as an English, isolated, because they know their limit. French sees themselves as French. Yes, elite. We are the real Cameroonians, 100% Cameroonian. Cameroonese. It is not right. And all this, again, I have a problem with always our Ecowas, Central African Republic, the Union, and then also the Ecowas, and then also the Arab League, the East Africa, the EAC, and then the SADC, and then the African Union in general. That these petty things, how and when will they sit down and then talk to their brother that please, it's one country, and it belongs overly. Allow political dispensation, democratic dispensation, allow other parties. Every time that Cameroon has elections, you can think of how many of the Cameroonian political opponents are in jail. Some are sitting in jail till today, all the way from John Fruity time. They are always in jail. Elections in Fruity went how many times? The old man went how many times in jail? Several times. And no ECOWAS country, no SADC, no EAC, no Central Africa, no the Arab League, no African Union have spoken. So you see the violence between the Amazonians and the central government of Cameroon. How many people and still being murdered, still being killed, still being on the run. Some cross the river from Nigeria, from Nyangasai to Nigeria. And nothing has been said. It's not even documented. Nobody hears their voice. Nobody knows their voices. BBC will just speak a little bit about it. Al Jazeera will speak a little bit about it. We are not feeling any international bite. We are not feeling any international response. The Africans themselves will leave African matter, go and speak about Russia-Ukraine matter. But what is in our nose, what is close to our window, they don't speak about it. They will go and condemn in European affair. Something that doesn't concern them is what they carry, and they cry more than the widow. While back down their home, what their brothers, what their sisters, what their brothers are doing to themselves, in terms of all in the good name of governance. So Cameroon, whoever asks it, I really get a little bit emotional when I'm talking about Cameroon. And the reason is very simple. The reason is that, sorry, my battery, sorry about that. Just sorry.
It's okay. You've been freezing ever since.
Okay, no, I think, oh God, it's, hold on, just give me 1 minute.
You're welcome.
Okay, so I get a little bit excessively emotional when I discuss about Cameroon, because the fact is, I would say, is a country that I earned my first $50 salary, which I won't give the details. So I'm attached to that country, and I know that country. I don't listen to any Ghanaian songs. I know every Cameroonian musician, and I know every Cameroonian song. Even the one that came yesterday, I could just sing, either in Douala or whichever. It's a country that I love so much. But the Cameroon then and Cameroon today, of course, if I would say that he helped stabilize maybe political calmness, blah, blah, blah. His Excellency Paul Biya, I'm not a Cameroonian, but his time is far overdue. It's better maybe he allow the political climate. Of course, I do not believe in the division of the country, but it's because of how the English feel that they've been treated that calls for the idea that they want also their self-determination, called that they want to be Ambazonians or they want to be Anglophone Cameroonians. And for that matter, they want to have their territorial control, sovereign rights or sovereignty nation. It is the making of the French system. Where is the French? Where is the English? Where are the Americans? What is the world talking about it? African Union, do they know what goes into Cameroon? So as a result of this divisions, that has retarded the economics, that has retarded the wealth, and then also the Cameroon that we all thought should be one. Cameroon's money, Gabon doesn't come anywhere closer. Cameroon's money with the population, if harnessed the resources, Congo doesn't come closer. It should be indeed the richest country in the Central African Republics. Yet now it's one of the countries with the highest unemployment rate, because even employment is selective justice. Even employment, one has to know either you are from Anglophone or you are Francophone or where. So predominantly, some of these issues is the making of we the Africans, our own palaver, our own issue. But I'm saying that issue of Cameroon is a breakdown of diplomatic approach. Issue of Cameroon is the intended and the purpose of some of the African and precisely the African Union not even taking Cameroon as one of the agenda. Well, I've sat in some of, let me put it that way, the APC summit, the African Caribbean Pacific Summit. And you quietly get shocked that even the Ambazonians are not prepared to state their case. Surprisingly, you don't even see that anybody representative had been to any of the African Union summit to state a case. Neither had any African government raised the issue of Cameroon on the floor of African Union discussions. I find it amazing. But you surprisingly find an African government talking about Ukraine, talking about, how do we call it, Indonesia, talking about Asian countries, talking about other places, but nobody raises the issue of Cameroon on the floor of African Union summit. It's quite amazing. So, Susan, I think we have, as I said, we have the oldest association, far older than European Union, and I'm referring to the African Union, which used to be the OAU. And even when you come to the Ecowas at the level of the EAC and then SADC, all these unions are older than the European unions. See where and how far they've gone, and look at us, where we are. See, no African country owes the other. Cameroon hasn't got their money with Gabon, neither Gabon has money with Cameroon. Even between Cameroon and Gabon, there's a visa. How is it possible? His Excellency Paul Biya had created also a kind of a wall, making sure that Cameroonians will not be permitted so easily to go to Gabon, form association out there, or go to Central African Republic, Bongi, or go to Guinea Equatorial, for them to be able to unleash pressure on his government. So he will not have a freedom, as it has happened in the case you are referring to, which will deal with the subject of South Africa and Kenya, a mutual, even traveling, easy access to one country. Cameroon doesn't travel easy among their own states. Why is it like that? Has Ecowas, has African Union seen that? Have they asked why it is like that? Why is he not having eye-to-eye with Odimba of Gabon? Why is he not partisan? He's not good with the Central African Republic. Why is he not good? Is it all these kind of skirmishes? So whoever asked that question, let's see, time will tell. I know it might not be maybe our time, but I strongly believe that a day will come. Either the country will be divided into two, or the country may have a leader, inshallah, one day, who will sit down and think through and unite that beautiful, that great nation, and then harness their resources and put it back as it used to be. The most country that somebody goes to work at the end of the month, Cameroonian does not take his salary home. They take it to a bar and ask everybody to drink and eat. C'est moi qui va payer. You don't see that anymore. Now there's a strong demarcation, strong barrier, and then also there's a strong lines between Cameroonians. I think one day all these barriers, all these frontiers must be broken down. It brings us to, if you permit me, to one of your subjects today, Ethiopia.
Yes.
Yes. Ethiopia, as we all know, it has been one of the countries during the Second World War. It was the only African country, more or less, that was very powerful. In the 45s, in the 40s, in the 50s, the only African country that stood on the side of the Axis power to fight on behalf, on one belt with Japan, on one belt with Italy, on one belt with Germany. They were part of the Axis power. So it's not Ethiopia of yesterday. Now, look at the country with a multiple of about 23 strong commercial volumes of resources. Strong nation with big money. And when you put aside Nigeria, the next populated country on the continent of Africa, you and I know, is Ethiopia. It's a country with a vast land, very populated. It is the most nicest in terms of resources. There's salt rock, there's phosphorus, and then you're talking about uranium, every kind of mineral resources, the gemstones, the limestones, the clay, everything that gives money to a nation to be successful, Ethiopia has them. Yeah?
Yes.
Now, Ethiopia and the issue of Eritrea, for instance, to begin with. The Baharan Nagash, which used to be the Ethiopia, that used to be the Eritrea. These were 14 provinces of nations or provinces that formed Ethiopia. Look at the tribal settings. The Omoros, the Hamaras, the Somalis, the Tigris, etc. Not forgetting that when even after the fall or after the end of the Second World War, Italy, as a Western nation, was the first country that wanted to take Ethiopia. But Emperor Meleke didn't agree, leading to Italians and Ethiopians fighting the Battle of Adwa, which Italians couldn't stand because they knew the Italian fighting spirit, their strategy, because they fought alongside with them against the West in Germany. They couldn't defeat them. So this is a country that the Western nations know very well that they are strong and they were united. So surprisingly, without any reservations, the Europeans and then the superpowers all had over the years attempted and tried to divide that nation. Each of these countries, including the Italy, everyone wanted to go on that land and take a piece, take advantage of the people. Because today's fight is with the Tigray. The Tigray region, which is in the north, of course, we know that they had been at the forefront of a lot of Ethiopian administrative positions. The Adnan and coup, most of them were from there. But then you and I also know the popular tribe, the Omoro, the Amaris, the Amaras and others, and the Somalis. Tigray is the fifth largest or the fifth biggest tribal settlements. And they are all united. They are all one country. They are all one people. After when the West even were able to manage and force Ethiopia to allow the Eritrea to go, it's the same strategy that some of these Western nations had wanted the Tigray also to be out of Ethiopia. What for? Well, what has Eritrea benefited ever since they left the provinces of Ethiopia and they left the federation? It's a poor country. Eritreans have not benefited. From the Sudani side of Ethiopia, Djibouti, Eritrea, and all the Somalis and all the surrounding nations, Ethiopia could have been, as I've said, the godfather of that region because they are so big and they have so much money, so much wealth. What do we see? The Western nations have supervised Ethiopia to be divided. Look at within 2 years of a fight, between the government and also the Tigray forces, over 600 to 700 to 900,000 people have been killed, have been murdered. Ethiopia has seen a lot. The country would have been so far. The gentleman, Ahmed Abiy, this young man, let us not forget, he was a part. He had been a rebel person before. And when he came out and he went out and came back and said, no, we are one people. Let's unite. Our country has what it takes to compete Europe or more than Europe. We have the population, we have the people, we have the resources. And when the gentleman has changed, pushing Ethiopia from being one of the poor countries in Africa some 20 years ago, famine and droughts. Those times anything you hear about Ethiopia, you think of maybe a poverty. Now it has been the permanent, the fifth largest economy and the fifth biggest richer nation. Throughout the COVID, it was the only country that provided airlines around the entire world, that they were flying to every destination. Look at the size of Ethiopia Airways. How would the world now sit down and make sure, I'm referring to the Western, instigating and making sure that the Tigray region will do the same thing like Eritrea did. African Union, yes, thank God, now there's an agreement. Thank God they are smoking a peace pipe. But I didn't expect Ethiopia to be there. I didn't expect them to have this kind of uprising. I didn't expect them to have this kind of issue. Let us ask ourselves, the fight of Ethiopia, how many of these European countries, how many of this Western world have raised the issue at the UN General Assembly or the United Nations Security Council, discussing about the ongoing event of Ethiopia? How many? How do we leave Africa and then we go to Europe, who are over 300 years ahead of us in terms of advance and then technology, in terms of economies and the development of the human resources, in terms of developing their countries, in terms of having developed their people, their citizens. Look at where they are and where we are. We spend our time to go and discuss their issues, looking for solutions for Europeans, looking for solutions for America, looking for solutions for Central Asia, and then Latin America, and then South America. But when it comes to our own home, we sit back and look at where. So they said they've stopped the fight, but I'm saying that Ethiopia, next to Nigeria, in terms of size, thank God, the new Prime Minister, Ahmed Ali Abiy, has done so much well, put the country now, his diplomatic approach, for them to come to this table, for them to smoke a peace pipe. And then also Obasanjo, with his skills, Uhuru and all that. We hope and we believe that their signatures we hold. We hope and we believe that Ethiopians will see themselves, that they should not sit and be fooled. Because the advantage is that Europe is Europe has come to an end. In terms, they've been exposed. We're going to go there. They need a place, an African country, where they can replenish their stock, where they can get their money from, where they can. So let us create uprising. Let us create misunderstanding. Let us create problems. Let us create division. Let us create political divisions. Either than that, it makes no viable sense at all to me, and I believe larger Ethiopians, where the Tigray issue should be an issue of a country that is seeing rapid growth of economy on the continent and the whole world. Rapid growth. An African country that has more than 18 Dreamliners, over 300 aircraft, over 2,520, almost about 3,000 flight air hostess alone, over 3,000. They have trained the young boys pilots more than any other country in the world, followed by Ethiopia. Having 23-year-old boys sitting on an aircraft, flying 877, you find them in Ethiopia. Having a lady of 24 years flying Dreamliner to the United States of America. What does a country want that you would just allow politics and then also for out of nothing? You cannot even lay hands on what they are fighting for. Dr. Susan, that is the saddest aspect of it all. Either they are fighting over either land. When you ask the Ethiopians, they will not be able to tell you why they are fighting. Is it territorial? Is it money? Is it land? Is it resources? Or what exactly it is? They don't have any idea. So surprisingly, it is sad. Africa must wake up maybe again, once again, and then we must let our unions effectively operate and then call speed a speed and say that we are tired. A new direction, a new rebirth, a rebirth of our country and a rebirth of our political system. Because what is going on in Ethiopia, that will loosen so many. Ethiopia has seen so much of death in the past, in 20 years, last 20 years, etc. All these things should not be happening to a country that has such a richer nation with richer mineral resources for them to fight out of nothing. So the Tigray issue, we believe that Ethiopia, I'm saying that they must be wise, because there's no cause, there's no reason, there's no purpose. They don't have any agenda to fight, except that they must understand that the West that supported Eritrea to move, we know, and the Ethiopians know how they divided them. At that time, when even it was part as Baharan Nagash region, there was no problem. Soon as they turned into Eritrea, there came an issue. How long have they been fighting with them? But now even the Eritreans, they are wise. They can't be confused anymore. The countries that forced them out of Ethiopia and the countries that want to go there and take, they haven't given up. So how much more the Ethiopia being a country that gave them independence out of the same political heat. So the Tigrayans, I think they should think twice and be wise and remain in touch and remain as one country. If not anything at all, for them, the tribes are big and the tribes are united. You have given Haile Selassie, Mengistu, Hariam, you have all kind of people, Benezewe, all of them tried to unite the country, even though, yes, they have their tribal, there's some paddlings, etc. Nevertheless, I expect Ethiopia, where they are, they should not slip. Because the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 3 years, Ethiopia has been consistent on the fourth, as the fourth table nation in terms of what growth and acceleration, and then larger economy. Let them be there and come up, not to see back.
Correct.
They should not fall back. They have what it takes to compete Europeans. Technology is Ethiopia. Technology is Ethiopia. The only country that did not, together with Libya, that they didn't allow, the West could not defeat them. The same Italians that went to Ethiopia, the same Italians were in Libya, they couldn't defeat them. So not this time and this generation that they will allow, whereas they have even aircraft more than European countries. They have aircraft more than Air Brothers. They have aircraft more than most of the European countries. So why would you allow the country to fall apart? Let us all stand behind them solidly. Let's have programs like this through you. Let us talk and push the agenda, the African that we want to have, and the African that we are all preaching, the oneness. And if any country is falling, like Ethiopia, we should be wise and know that, yes, the enemies are not, the enemies are outside. Who wants to come in there? But we should find out what they want from our land before we're allowed to follow them. So, Dr. Mariam, Susan, that would be on the subject of Ethiopia. I think peace has been signed, peace agreements have been signed. Let's hope that they'll follow up suit and make sure that it prevails and it stays, and let them be one united nation and one country and one people.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Excellent. Wonderful. I have some 2 questions before we move on to the last topic for today, which would be the visa-free marriage between Kenya and South Africa. And honestly,
yes,
what's going to happen, like we see, and this economic outbreak, and we are beginning to look if the blocks would fall. You understand? That could be another solution to actually the one Africa that we're looking for. Now we see this visa-free, we see even their one passport in this region. And sometimes, I don't know whether this is true, that Democratic Republic actually was even, leaving the Ecowas to join the East African bloc. And we see a lot of these things. We wish most of this should happen, border-free, visa-free, so that the good markets could open, economic could boost, even political will could. And if this would be the case, that would be the thumb up. So the question is very simple. The 2 questions that we have here before we go to that. NS Parker just asked, I think he was referring in the case of Cameroon, what, in your opinion, do you think? Should we wait on Cameroon to change leadership, or we start investing now? What would you advise? And then the second
on Cameroon, Cameroonians are saying that, well, they are not able to overthrow Pobia with their ballot box. So I'm sorry, they will comfortably sit and wait. May God forbid, but then they're waiting for him to die. And what next? But I'm saying that, yeah, death is a reward of mankind. But then we should also not wait until things fall apart or deteriorated, because the one who may come after him might do the worst. So it will be another process of beginning the entirety and the beginning the whole thing. Yes, it might not be this generation in the next 5 years, 3 years, or 10 years. Nevertheless, of course, with the age of His Excellency Pobia, I'm looking at how in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, he will be able to function. Well, Robert Mugabe went through that, and he still left Zimbabwe. Now, having said that, Cameroonians are too gentle and soft. And I'm referring to the English Cameroonian also. The violent indeed, I have said, will not support. Because you don't have the guns, you don't have the arms, you don't have the people, and you cannot fight with a central government that could be very brutal. You will not win that battle. So it is needless, it was pointless. It is not an exercise that the Amazonian region and the political leadership should follow. Yes, it takes a longer time, but the stimulation is what the Amazonians are not doing. They are not stimulating the agenda, and the strategy is poor. Leadership of Amazonia, or the English, or the Anglophone, fighting for one country or fighting even for their self-determination as a region, call it a country, their approach is poor. The political approach, regardless of the, let's set aside that they don't have the financial muscle. You don't need to have financial muscle, because Indonesia, a lot of countries under Indonesia at the time have also, they were able to separate. It takes a time, but you must have a strategy. Where is the strategy? The first thing is the political strategy. Tell me the political strategy of the Amazonian regime. They just only make noise. Just go here and speak. Even in Nigeria, Ecowas, they couldn't articulate, push. I was expecting that it's knocking the doors. When Nelson Mandela wanted to have abolishment of what? Apartheid. Countries that they went, they were in exile, yes. They were in Ghana at a point. The political leadership of ANC apartheid, ANC government, they all at a point used Ghana passport. They at a point, even some of the Mary Makiba and Oko, they all used Ghana Nigeria passport. But they were moving with strategy, one country to another, to solicit and lobby for support. Let their voices be heard. Like I said, I haven't seen the team of the Amazonians pushing the agenda to go to the OAU or the African Union, leading, because they are the African Union, you can even operate on the corridor. On the day on when there's a summit, you can operate on the corridor, meeting individual countries. They haven't done that. They haven't approached the leadership of Ecowas, except that some skirmishes, you see them, they say they are going to Nigeria. That is not the strategy. Don't waste the money and don't waste the people's time with the expectation that you won't be able to deliver. No, that is not the strategy. South Sudan, how long did it take John Garang to fight for them to get their country? Even when he got the country, after he was able to secure South Sudan, cleverly, Sudanese central government tricked him and killed him. So he should be having such kind of expectation. At the end of the day, a young nation was born, called South Sudan. The population of Amazonians and the South Sudanese, you might be even more than them. So it means that you can have your own nation. That is quite understandable. I do not support and propagate the agenda that okay, separate, but any if Opobia and the central government or the French government of Cameroon is not treating the English and they continue to treat that, it is okay, it is right that you can push the agenda for your country or for a country or a region that it could be your own self-determination. One, why and how do you have more than 17 political parties to go and contest for Bia? How do you win elections? Whereas you know very well that Yaoundé will not vote for a presidential candidate coming from Buea. Whereas you know Yaoundé will not vote for a political party coming from Nyenge. Yaoundé will not vote for a political party coming from Kumba. So the 17 leadership, the 17 parties Some of them, even their own wives, will not vote for them. Some of the political parties formed have not got one single pickup. How do you run elections and want to topple President Paul Biya, 30 years and change government, and you expect to go with one pickup and campaign and come to Douala for them to vote for you? To vote for you where? Aqua North, Wanamusadi, Dido Plage, New Bell. Where would they vote for you to win? So they must have a strategy of oneness, unite. Don't push the people in the bush. Don't let the children and the mothers and the kids being killed. Don't stand and deliver, how do we call it, speeches. And at the end of the day, you go and cover yourself, or you go and hide somewhere, and the innocent mothers, innocent kids are being killed. No, that is not how to push. Don't expect that you can win a battle within a day or two if you want to take your part of a particular part of a nation. You cannot win it a day or two. You need to build up the momentum. You need to stimulate the conversation with the international community. Let them hear you, let them hear you not. Now it makes it easier. You have the tool. Make the noise. Dr. Susan, make the noise. Amazonians, make the noise. Speak. Go to the international forums, proper international forums. Present your case. Yes, it is a difficult thing. Yes, there will be challenges, but over the period. So by the time His Excellency Paul Biya is tired, whoever comes there at that time, the Amazonians or the English provinces would have been strongly united and be able to push the agenda of one Cameroon, as you are all in, or English Cameroon, which could be the case, as in the South Sudan or the Western Cameroon. It should be the simplest thing. But to say that you are going to do whatever, you cannot get access to Paul Biya to overthrow him. That is a wildest dream. You cannot overthrow Paul Biya. It's not possible. You know it is not possible. You know you cannot fight in Kumba. They will rather come there and kill you. Where do you get access to get to Douala before going to Yaoundé? You will not reach anywhere. So don't waste your time. Don't waste your energy. You can't stay in Boya and fight with the central government that you want to topple Paul Biya. It is not. It's worthless. Needless exercise completely. It's a waste of killing your people and losing your people. So let the political strategy, let the noise be your hallmark, and then let it be your flag. Hold that flag. Move to conferences. Move to organizations, the international community. You will go, they will not listen to you because what? Paul Biya is having somebody and nowhere and nobody than the French. French is a superpower, and I'm talking about the France. When they sit on a table, they also promote their territorial nations, the overseas territories that they are still having interest. And one of the overseas territories that the French has interest in the Central Africa is not Congo. It's not Brazzaville to that extent. It's not much of Bongi, no. It is Cameroon and Gabon. These are the areas that they have the interest, and especially Cameroon. So what does it mean? Whereas you are making noise, the French is telling their colleagues, leave them. They are making noise. They are undemocratic. They are rebels. They are violent. How many times was ANC, African National Congress, and Mandela and the members were declared rebels? How many times were they declared? Thabo Mbeki, Oliver Tambo, all of them, including Ramaphosa, all of them were declared rebels. At the end of the day, including Maria Makeba, they were declared rebels. But for how many years? We were able somehow to crash down what? The apartheid system. So the learning point is there. The guarantees is there. The assurances is there. So you could see people have done, countries have done the same thing, not only in Africa, other parts of the world. It has happened. You need to build a strategy, and then you have to work on that strategy. Don't rather the people, that you need the people to fight the fight. You need the young men, you need the young women, you need the children to come and also to replenish the stock of your energy. You don't lose them. You rather don't lose them. I find it very sad and amazing that what kind of political strategy is that? Fighting for a nation, and then he said, you cannot fight the central government of Cameroon. C'est pas possible. You pay pas. You cannot. Regardless of how long it takes, you need to fight on. Fight with a pen, fight with a paper, fight with your voice. Nobody beats you to it. But if you want to fight with violence, you want to fight with guns, then they have better guns than you because you don't have the money to go. And the French are monitoring for them. You should know, you should be aware. Any country in Africa that the French has their interest, they debate and speak for them. And let me not lie to you and the listeners that when it comes to the international community, it comes to the supremacy, it comes to the big boys, the United States, the English, the French, and then you're talking about today countries that has come in, the Chinese and the Russian, etc. Each one of them speaks for the territory that they want to. They speak for countries that they want to. So who speaks for the English Francophone Cameroonians? Who speaks for you? The British are not there. They're supposed to be able to deal with this matter because they gave the Bakassi Peninsula and your side to the French and left. Having taken Cameroon from the Germans after the fall of the Second World War, they their side and together with the French agreed and they gave it to them. So the English is not speaking for you. So if you are speaking for yourself, know where you are coming from and know where to go and speak. Don't go and do violence. So you cannot overthrow Paul Biya. We can wait for only natural intervention when he will be naturally disarmed, either by age or by whichever. It is not my prayers. It can't be the prayers of anybody because he's a human being. Nevertheless, we are expecting that one day he will be tired. Let me use the word. But you today, before His Excellency Paul Biya is tired and he cannot function, where is the Amazonian political people, the political class, and then your party? Where is it? That is where you need, at that time, step forward and say that, yes, this time around, one enemy is out. Now, we also register our presence. Until we do that, this issue will continue and continue and continue. Now, there was another question in regards to Kenya and South Africa.
No, wait a minute. I don't know if you've answered the question of NS who said, should we wait for that leadership to invest or we should go ahead? But anyway, from every indication, what you're saying is there is still no grounds for any investment in terms of that because we don't see the headway of the situation in Cameroon at this present. So, but the next question was coming from Ekwam who said, please, Mr. Wahab, share your opinion on the future of Uganda in the light of its newfound wealth in gold, oil, and soon uranium. Can Ugandans look forward to a Kuwait standard of living?
Okay. Yes. You see, that region of East Africa, regards to referring to Uganda, you know, Uganda, of course, it's also a richer nation in terms of resources. But then you also know that it's one country that has a very stubborn political system. Kaguta Museveni, and then his presence. The same way, the same issue with Paul Biya, the African old guards who are still in power. It depends on their political philosophy, but let us not forget that Uganda has drifted more or less to China. I think if we're talking about one of the few African countries that are indebted heavily to the Chinese. Heavily indebted. Uganda should be the third or the fourth heavily indebted nation to the Chinese. So your resources that you have, depending on the agreement that Kagame, Kaguta Museveni has with the Chinese, yes, good number of them have stood in as collateral security or collateral guarantees already for the Chinese. But looking at also the population and the size of the wealth, Dr. Susan, every African country has what it takes to take care of themselves and to take care of our country far and richer, better than Europeans and maybe the other advanced nations. So you ask, if the Europeans were to have all these resources, one country has gemstone, you have gold. Look at the quality of gold that Ethiopia has. Look at the gold Uganda has. Look at you can name Uganda, like Zambia, is a country with a vast fleet of about 55 mineral resources. All of them commercially, if you are to mine them, should take about 100 years. We take the country to two different generations with richness, richer than Switzerland. Uganda is not different. But as you know, the political leadership would guarantee, go and take peanuts and guarantee the wealth of a nation and take money for themselves. But in terms of cost, in terms of standard of living, no African country should be poor. If we are to harness the opportunities and make use of what we have and properly invest in them, instead of every African country has just become a borrowing paradise. We just go ahead and borrow. And our presidents, our leadership are always been able to promote themselves, telling their citizenry or telling their people that my government have been able to borrow to come and do this. Look, if the West, if the Europeans are to come to Africa, even our roads will be seized because we are owing on every road that we've constructed. Except Libya, which was not owing any other country in the world during the time and before the death of Gaddafi. They didn't owe any country in the world. And they lived fabulously well. But the rest of the African countries, including Uganda, including my country, Ghana, every road, it is still under debt recovery. If the Europeans decide to seize our roads, they can come and impound and seize our roads because we don't build them with our own money. How is it possible? Why wouldn't they infiltrate in your camp and then make use of what they want? They make use of you. So Uganda, yes, of course, you have resources, but then, of course, what does Kaguta Museveni, what does he want for his people? If he thinks about that and is prepared to change maybe some of the things, well, he's not done too bad. If not for anything at all, he helped coup that region. At the time of Kagame, Burundi, for Kagame, Kaguta, all these boys, don't forget that they were all with Kagame army. So they tried, after the fall of Idi Amin, Obote, etc., you would say that he helped stabilize somehow. But the lengthy stay and then abusive or abuse of the power, it rather brings the countries down on her knees. Whereas they and a very few elites, they benefit out of that. If not, I don't see how Uganda could also be termed as one of the heavily indebted nations on the African continent, looking at all the resources that they have. So the person asking the question, I think my answer or my expectation is just as best as yours. But unfortunately, we don't have the power within our periphery, neither do we have the power within our arms. The power still rests in the hands of the political leadership, and for that matter, the leader or the head of state of the country. If you look back and look at the people and open his eyes and then feel for them, feel the poverty level, feel the past coups, feel the bad development, feel the bad rules. I think if they're able to think that way, we will be able to get somewhere. Until we get there, we may still have to wait. Who knows tomorrow? Kenya and South Africa. This visa, mutual visa, Dr. Susan, is long overdue. Why?
Yes.
Before His Excellency, the late President Muammar Gaddafi died, there was a declaration, there was a summit that took place, some in Zimbabwe, there was a summit in South Africa, there was a summit in Addis Ababa. Whereas Gaddafi proposed, he doesn't see the sense of any African country traveling to the other part of Africa with visa requirement. That was the proposal of Gaddafi. It is on record. They know, he said. And then it was on record that he was prepared to voluntarily use about 30% of the revenues of Libya alone to promote that agenda of one passport for one Africa. Gaddafi said. It was on record for him to have pushed the agenda for us to use one currency. Dr. Susan, for your information, I may not mention names of some of the countries, but even with that, I will mention Uganda. Uganda was one of the most friendliest nations to Gaddafi. Museveni was supported heavily by Gaddafi. The biggest mosque in the whole of East Africa, the second biggest, was built by Gaddafi in Uganda, Kampala. Several properties that he did and supported. But when it comes to the agenda of Gaddafi's African, promoting the African mentality, the African oneness, the African unity, and then pushing the agenda of the passport, the currency, etc. Countries that oppose, the first person to oppose, and that created a rift between Gaddafi and Museveni, was the passport issue which Gaddafi raised. Museveni was the first person to kick against. For your information. Even within Africa, whereas he said, I'll bring my money, 30%, let me take us. They kicked against that. There were a lot of things that he proposed. Now we claim that we have AFTAC, the African Free Trade, Continental Trade, blah, blah, blah. When was the AFTAC proposed? And now that it has been established with an office in Accra, tell me, is it effective? Has it been effective? Or is it still in the pipe and it's still on the drawing board? Even though commissioners are here, supervisors are here, coordinators are here. Tell me one AFTAC that between Ghana and Togo, up to now the customs, they are still on the road. Between Ghana and La Côte d'Ivoire, before you cross the border and enter Côte d'Ivoire before Abidjan, customs are all over because they know any car coming there is coming from Ghana stretch. Where is the AFTAC? Creating an office in Africa is not an issue for Africans. Creating a commission and give diplomatic status to people is not an issue, because the contribution is what they bring to feed the platform, and for that matter, either diplomats or commissioners. But in real sense, the work, which is the purpose of its establishment, is zero. I'll be very much afraid if the AFTAC will be able to succeed, because it was established not today. Long time the proposal was there. It was proposed not today that South Africa, we call it a big history. South Africa is allowing Kenya from January to arrive and stay whichever for 90 days. This was proposed long time, which Ghana, my country, was one of the first that have adopted until today. That every African member country, 54 countries, you can take visa on arrival at Kotoka International Airport. Kenya was also doing the same thing. Your country, my country, Cameroon, zero. They will not allow. They don't even allow Gabonese to enter. Neither Gabonese allow Cameroon to enter. And we have that pact, that agreement, signed long time. At that time, Thabo Mbeki was the president of Republic of South Africa. He disagreed to allow African countries to come to South Africa. I mentioned Thabo Mbeki. He did this, he disagreed. Kenyans awarded and opened their borders for South Africa. Long time, without collecting even visa fee for South Africans. Without collecting visa on arrival for South Africans. Kenya has opened her borders long time to a lot of African countries. So if today South Africa says Kenya can now enter because William Ruto received Ramaphosa, and now that they are now agreeing, for me, I'm asking myself, why even January? Because the protocols were there, the agreements were there. It has long time been signed, and you are enjoying that side for years. Why should it take January? What are you going to prepare again? What document are you going to write? It's a mutual visa free between the two countries. So soon as the announcement is made, the next day, you don't need anything. Because South Africans have been traveling to Kenya for heaven knows, not even paying a visa fee. So, Dr. Susan, it is not a news. When one African country allows the other one to fly in, it is not a news. It is something that they have all signed. But when they go back to their respective countries, they tell the country, listen, obliesa. Forget about it. Don't do. But with that one, I must say that the African countries must congratulate Kenya and Ghana particularly, and I think Zambia. Egypt did not sign. Algeria did not agree. Tunisia did not agree. Lots of the Botswana did not agree. Namibia, I don't remember, but good, Angola, yes. They didn't agree. Angola did not agree. So, if all of you sat, and then majority of the African countries agreed, so if the majority carries the vote, that yes, let's have a trip. We have a union that has been lasted for so long. So we should be able to travel to one another, another's territory, without any problem. If even not to go and reside, it's okay to begin from somewhere. Europeans have done their own. You can move from Belgium and live in Germany. You can live from Germany and go and live in Austria. They have managed to, but they didn't start one day. They started from a certain regime, and then they keep on modifying and they keep on changing. How is it possible that our own African brothers sat on one table, ate, went there with their presidential jet and a common introduction and let all African travel and be able to trade, free movement, exit and entry, and others seriously. And I'm saying that the first country to oppose Gaddafi's proposal was Uganda. South Africa opposed because they still see an avenue for Africans to travel in there with visas to get money. Why? So, one thing is here. Kenya also have somehow an issue with, I'm sorry to say, a lot of Somali who are using Kenyan passports. I know I'm referring to security. The South Africa already has its own security challenges. I want to believe and hope that the Kenya would also do their best to sanitize their site, and people who will be traveling to South Africa, that they will not end up, because Kenya has also presence of Al-Shabaab. And these groups, they always look out for soft spots, and they look for countries where they can go, hold up, harbor themselves, and then plan, get some money, financial support from somewhere, and unleash atrocities and pressure on their country. And indeed, you and I know South Africa is another destination that they can hold because it's also quite a large country. So even then, even though there's a mutual visa-free, there's a need for the two countries also to check about security. It could be cyber, it could be anything. we encourage that the other African countries must also follow up suit and emulate the standard of what South Africa today have done. Even though to me, it is not something it is not a news, but at least we take it some like that, and then we start from somewhere. So the others must follow. The Egyptians must follow. The Tunisians must follow. The Algerians must follow. The Moroccans must follow. And then the North African countries, they, to some extent, as you would ask maybe Egyptian, or you ask maybe Morocco, the Ant-Africa, it tells you, Anna fish Africa, Anna Europa. How does an African tell me that me, I'm an European? So if we have that mentality in mind, how do we open our borders for our brothers and sisters, for us to have a free trade, for us to have a free trip, and then free agreement, free movement? It is long overdue. The continent, if we are to unite, these are what makes a nation. Yes, there had been a proposal of United States of Africa. Gaddafi proposed. Obasanjo was part. President Kufuor was part. Thabo Mbeki was part. There was a proposal, an attempt that we should have a unite. We should unite our countries, unite one country, unite one currency, use one passport, and then we should have rather one African leadership. That was what Kagame, how do we call it? Museveni even got angry. The Gaddafi proposed that we should have one president for the continent Africa, and then we have regional heads. That was an issue. It was a fierce exchange. Ask them, they will tell you. So, Doctor, we know that African leadership, and then our convoy cars, and then our first ladies, it will be a very tall order for us to have one president. that would not happen. That wouldn't happen, but let's see, maybe some generations in the future, they will come and do it. By that time, we will not be around, but the continent leader. Now, your last topic would be what? Russia, Ukraine.
I think that we can pick some questions, and I know you're not deserting us, so we can trade. One is very, very elaborate. There's just a lot input there. We can treat that next week. Is it okay with you?
We can treat that. We need to treat that because, you know, one aspect that baffles me, which I want to address, and I want to ask, that yes, countries of Europe, countries of the world, superpowers, have benefited from wars in Africa. They have indeed benefited from tribal settings, tribal wars, ethnic cleansing, political divisions, atrocities against ourselves. The Western nations have really benefited.
Absolutely.
And Africa,
I would love us to treat this because that's what I'm saying, that is very elaborate.
We did it next week. Let's pick questions. Let's pick questions. We did that topic next week.
Let's do it next week because that topic is a very big topic that I want us to you see, introducing this part, like we just went back, refresh our memories from how unstable the instability on the continent in terms of political upheavals or updates and stuff like that. This has been long due, and we have been more focused on the cultural aspect, the spirituality aspect of, you know, how we overcome. But you see, the first time you came here, we did these topics, it was like we are at war, like nothing would happen. And in the meantime, we have grown spiritually, culturally. We are so like robust. And so now you see the way you treat the topics now, we begin to get the facts and the points clear. But the one thing that we have to be able to take over, let me put it that way, we will have to touch base with who is the invincible hands in this. We don't produce weapons. I mean, even if we say we need weapons, so we fight. Everything is a political, economic, social, cultural, whatever, technological, you know, adage to all the points that we are saying. And so I would really just crave your indulgence that we treat this topic, the influence or the invincible hands behind Africa's instability, call them by name, and we treat each one. And if we take the reference now of the Ukraine a Russian war, look at the dynamics, then we would even still understand, like, this is not, if you said this was not an African war, how come some reforms that are going on the continent now, like the inflation or the mismanagement or the bad governance and the systems in place, and you blame it on Ukraine? Since when do we have to buy oil or not consume our own produce? And I think, I don't know if you just want to brush a little bit and then we look into the details of it next week. Is it okay?
Well, you see, Dr. Susan, I would ask every African president, 54 or 56 countries, put it, which one of them has given money to Ukraine or have given money to Russia, and for that matter, we are becoming poor? Which one of them? They should tell us. So none of them have given money to Russia, Ukraine. Africa, we eat our own food. We haven't stopped eating our food. Has anybody told us to go and maybe eat macaroni or maybe only to rely on flour from Russia, whereas you have grains that are getting rotten? That's one side of it. I'm saying that the African instability, the root cause, has to do with how stupid, I'm sorry, some of our governments are, because we have taken up an independence. Last ones of the African independence, you can talk of South Sudan, but that one is a country to country. In the 90s, South Africa, African country, gave independence to Namibia. That one is country to country. Ethiopia gave independence to Eritrea, African country to country. But when we put all this aside, and you're talking about the Spanish, the French, the English, colonization, and then post-colonization and independent, all of us in the 70s were the last, referring to the Portuguese, the five, the Cape Verde, the Guinea-Bissau, the Sao Tome and Principe, the Cape Verde, Angola. Okay? These ones are the ones that got independent in the late or in the mid of 70s. And then you come to South Africa and you come to Zimbabwe, that got the independence around the 80s. When you take these countries out, Ghana, 65 years, Nigeria, 62 years, all these nations, 1960, how many of them, when the English were given independence, the French were given independence at that time because they were angry. So if we are in 2022 and you gain independence in 1960, and you're talking about 60 years or 62 years, or in the case of Ghana, 65 years, and you still believe that your colonial master is behind your instability, I strongly would say no. You have allowed them to be an originator and tormentor of your own instability. Because of what? You took independence. You didn't give the independence back to your people. Our post-independence leadership, about 90% kept the independence on their chest without releasing to the people who supported them. The agenda, the idea was that independent now, we wanted self-determination, we are ripe and we are capable of taking care of our own country. Yes, of course, we're going to go through turbulences. Yes, they also went through turbulences. Europe went through turbulences in the 19th century. They went through turbulences in the 18th century. In the 5th century, they went through turbulences. The same thing from now different from America. Americans declared war on United Kingdom, but today they are friends. They fought. They fought with Mexico. They fought with the Spanish. They fought with a lot of countries. So fighting is not maybe today. However, when they sat down to realize that, okay, we don't need that, they are friends. Now, America called them allies of the United States, friends of America. You see the Spanish, you see Mexicans, you see the English. Countries that America declared war on them, they are all friends. How come by we, till today, we are fighting over 2 kilometers border stretch. 2 kilometers border stretch. And some of them, there's nothing on it, bare land, no even resources. And that one becomes an instability as a result of ethnic cleansing, as a result of people dying, as a result of people with displacements, etc. Refugee, creating crisis over land, not more than 5 kilometers side, and there's nothing on that land. So yes, it means that certain people use and take advantage and benefit. You either have money to build our hospitals, but we have money to buy weapons. As you mentioned, we have money to buy weapons, to kill ourselves and fight. Nevertheless, how many African countries manufacture, produce, invent weapons? Virtually none. Virtually none. Where do we get it from? The same Europe, the same out of continent, the same superpowers, they sell it to us. Whose money? Yes, we don't have the cash. We release against what? We release against mineral resources. How do they get the mineral resources? A certain clan, a certain tribe, certain people are living there. Okay, let's create problems for them, take advantage of the situation, and go and harness and then mine the resources. So our instability, we can go on and on and on and on and on. That's why I'm saying that we should not leave our continent to go out there. Yes, we are part of the international community, but it is not right and it is not acceptable for any African government, out of our inefficiencies, bad governance, bad administration, bad accounting, bad management, bad monitoring, bad control, and bad leadership. Then we blame now. It has become a singing choir song. Ghana, Nigeria, every African president says that it's Russia, Ukraine that has made us poor. You rather supposed to be in the position to take advantage of what is happening in Russia and Ukraine and feed the European shelves. Why would Russia-Ukraine war affect the European shelves? Why would it affect oil? Why would it affect chicken? Why should it affect even common detergents? It tells you now that the Europe were only advertising, marketing products from that side. So what do we have to give? Now the Europeans are starving. Now the Europeans don't have pineapples. Now the Europeans don't have apple. Pineapple is not coming from Russia, it's coming from Africa. Go out there and sell your pineapple. Go out there and sell them your milk products. Ethiopia, they have one of the best milk products in the whole world. What are you doing? Kenya, yes, they are supplying. Why don't we take advantage of the situation in Europe? The table has turned. Rather, we are sitting with our hands on our head, crying over Russia, Ukraine making us poor, whereas you have the commodities, you have the foodstuffs to go and feed them. Show them how to eat eba. Show them how to eat babara. Show them how to eat fufu. Show them how to eat. It's the way that they made us do. When we were having drought, famine, and hunger, they introduced their food to us. Rice was not our food, but they gave it to us because we have to learn how to eat. We should also be prepared to give them plantain. They'll eat. So sell more of what you have during crisis. Every country and most countries have taken advantage of war. Let's leave that topic hanging, and then we go into that topic, and then we look at the genesis of it. Africans are not the makers of that troubles. We should not also cry over that troubles. Much as we are international community, we should be able to see how best we can also make our economies better out of that, because the fight is already on there. Europeans, they haven't been able to solve it. Some of them, they push this agenda because of what they were expecting. Now, unfortunately, it's crashed on their faces. We should not sit here and be crying. There are what it takes that we can also supply the Western and the world markets that are shortage of foodstuffs is not anything at all. We don't have the technology, it's okay, but we have the food. We have the pear, we have the mangoes. All these things are not easily found in European and American and other Western nations. So what are we doing with ours that we are throwing at them away? In our markets, on the streets, tomatoes are flying all over in our markets, on the ground. How much is tomato, a kilo of tomato in Europe now? What are we doing? This is what you have to be looking at. Make money out of what is existing. Use that, take advantage of it. We are not. So we'll deal with that subject. Maybe it's almost midnight out here in Africa, in Ghana.
Yes.
So
We have to call it. We have to call it honestly. I mean, but it was nice to get hold of you. We brushed these political issues because it's like we've been having a lot of questions and on it. So and we've had a lot of new family members that have subscribed that are supporting the Pan African Daily, and we rebroadcasted your past shows, and they were so astonished. They were so happy to get to know you and that we get on this. We have a lot of challenges, we have a lot of subject matters, we have a lot of topics to touch, and I'm actually thanking you for being back on board. And I see you're even more more expanded. I see comments in the group who say, oh my god, this guy is just so knowledgeable. And we know our brother, our hub, is the African encyclopedia, not just on the continent, but also um, in the diaspora. And we look forward to have you next week. Even your constituency, the West Papua Guinea, we've not heard
the
long
West
from
Papuans.
them. Yes, how have they been, been evolving out there? And yes, so I want to actually thank you. I know it's damn so late because we also took on the project a little bit earlier because of technical reasons. We've been having some electrical, I don't know what, there was rain that actually fell out here and went into some of the pipes. That's why the other day when we had our brother go back to Africa, we were seriously interrupted. And I think today is much better, even though you're still freezing. I think we still have to take a look at it. But tomorrow, we're going to be live tomorrow with Dr. Tatah, and he's going to be treating the topic of organic and agriculture as one of the lucrative businesses where young Africans at home and abroad should actually not take off their eyes. And I think we also will be relating to the Lumi currency that was launched yesterday in South Africa at the Embo Kingdom. We might be having a voice out there to give us just a small overview while we look at the entire event. I hear it was hectic out there. It was very well welcome, or totally embraced. And I had one of the brothers in the comment, I think from New York, posted on our walls and was like, I thought the Lumi was already existing on the continent. I'm not quite sure about how that is true, but what I know is that the Embo Kingdom actually officially they launched the Lumi cryptocurrency in South Africa, and the news is actually going wild out there. We actually see most of this happening very soon, and to get more substance from you, Mr. Wahab. What do you want to conclude? When do you think it will be possible for us to have you next week on
Yes,
these political issues?
yes, just update me when, and then just only give me. I'll make a time for us to do it. That shouldn't be a problem. So whenever appropriate, let me see. And then next week we'll deal with the issue of my country, West Papua, where, as I've said and mentioned, that was part of the issue that Africans were not concerned about our own brothers and sisters being the biggest, living and occupying the biggest island of the entire South Pacific and the only African descent. That till today, more than the population of most of the countries in the Caribbean and then also the Pacific, with that independent, being tortured, being killed, abnormally maltreatment meted out to them in West Papua. Yet, their Prime Minister, Ben Wenda, is sitting out there in exile in the UK. Africans are not speaking about it. Let's see how, if any European nations in this particular this century, 2022, that any European country will be maltreated to that extent, and Europeans will keep quiet. So how and why? A lot of nations, rather Europeans that are even speaking for West Papua, especially the Hollands, the Luxembourgs, and some of the other countries, have taken the matter upon themselves to push and tell Indonesia that you can't treat them as dogs. They are human beings. They want their country, they want their nation. Please grant them. Topics, like I said, those are the things that Ambazonians, Cameroonians should be doing. Voices are being raised. All of us were putting our mouth, pushing the agenda. One day, West Papua will have their independence. There is the way. Africans, we don't support ourselves when it comes to such a thing, but we're able to leave and go and speak about other regions and then other matters. Next week, call on me and let's have also another discussions pertaining Russia, Ukraine, and then also the Africans, why we are crying and why we claim that Russia, Ukraine has made us poor. Thank you very much.
I also thank you for your time. I mean, it's midnight out there. Should we make it much earlier next week? Anyway, I would have to connect with you depending on that.
No
thank you so very much.
Take care of yourself, doctor, okay?
Yes. How about to you?
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Ciao.
Wonderful. I want to thank all of you for your patience. And I see people still watching from Nigeria and even in Ghana and most countries, like I know in Kenya, it should be about 1 p.m., I think, or even 2, late in the night. Like I said, we had to carry on this edition very, very late because our correspondent, Al Wahab, was not in a position to get earlier on the show, and that was the only possibility that we could start this series. And we all have sacrificed to make it a date, and I actually truly appreciate you. I see a lot of you who came in and like, oh, I'm late. Cheryl, thank you. Snobe, thank you. NS, Hakwan, all of you, KM, I mean, you guys is actually making, and Kojo, thank you for moderating, and your assistant. So you see, as a matter of fact, it doesn't matter how many of us have been on this conversation today, but it was very, very necessary that we touch base with our reality. I mean, sometimes we get really in at the spirituality level as if nothing is happening on the continent. As we just fine, we just good. No, there's a lot going on. We just reach out to a community out there in Turkana, and exactly in Kenya, as we're talking about, who apparently happens to be one of the poorest community in the world as of now, and we see children and babies dying of hunger. That is, I mean, that's not possible in this century. And we'll be showing some images out there because one of the correspondents and a young Kenyan discovered a whole village of people dying of hunger. I mean, dying of hunger, drought, no food, babies, and some have been rescued. And there's a whole campaign going on, and people are supporting. We're still waiting for the correspondent to come out, tell us exactly. And that should be maybe our end of this Gregorian year, where we want to put our support to feed our people in need, particularly in areas like that. It cannot work. It should not work. It should not even exist. Nonetheless, we have a lot of people that are throwing food. Really, I don't want to call them billionaires or millionaires, because these ones, they just don't care sometimes. And that's the reason why they amass even most of the wealth, and they become so filthily rich, and others are just so poor. We're going to reach out to people that just have a good need and a good heart, and to support this project out there, and let us feed our people. By the end of this year, we should be reaching out to them. So, like I said, this news got to us, and we're really, really shocked about it. And they're putting out a lot has been going on. People have been donating to these children. If you look at the videos, it's not describable. Yes. So we will try our best, and we will reach out. We'll share the information. We'll send the links and the contacts. And if you're motivated, you should be motivated to support, feed a child in this village in Turkana County, Kenya. Wonderful. So we're going to see ourselves again tomorrow, yeah? Tata Zambe, yeah, tuko pamoja to all of you alchemists. It's been a while. We haven't seen ourselves. Yes, every other war Yeah, every other wall that they've planted upon us, call it because of the wars that we just talked about today, the political situation you've seen. We all look happy. We all seem like we are getting the Africa that we want. We're taking control. We're getting united. Our voices matters. But at the end of the days, when we go back to our reality, we're still saying that we have a long way to go. But we can start by feeding ourselves and even just taking care of the needy. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to fight, they change the walls. It's a solution to just, but we can do the least that we can do and play our own role. So I want to thank all of you. It's pretty late, even us here. So we should be going to bed and we see ourselves tomorrow. Same time. Same time, usually consider 2 p.m., but we just know that we went, I think, 2 hours behind on Saturday. Time changes. So just watch out, hit your notification button, and be on the alert on the 12/12 solidarity. So each time when we come live, you should be on board. Thank you so very much. Yes, I know. Black Jesus working it out. I don't know. Yes, anyhow that we want to put it, how we want to call it. We have to support one another, and that's the spirit, and that's the movement, and nothing is going to stop that. No amount of political wars or coup d'etats or whatever they call it, because all these political agendas, they're just fighting about themselves and making so much money, and while our people keep dying in a rot because we don't have a voice out there on our own. But that time is over right now, and I thank you for your utmost support, your prayers, being here and just hearing and listening our own stories by ourselves. I mean, this was not BBC reporting, isn't it? This was not Deutsche Welle or CNN. This was our brother telling us exactly how it is on the continent from his point of view. So thank you so very much. We see ourselves tomorrow. Good night to all of you. Tuko pamoja, and I think some people are already getting up now, and we just say good night to all of you. Bye.
After centuries of misguidance caused by slavery, colonization, lack of awareness of our history, and institutional disinformation, a new Africa is on the move, determined and getting organized. Afrika tuko pamoja. Welcome to the United Kingdoms of Great Africa.
You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tatah. The Africa we want. Unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherland's calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa.